Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammaṃ Sanghaṃ Namasami. So the Buddhist teachings have been around for a long time, 2.5 to 2,700 years. And during that time, of course, there have been various, they say, expressions of it, expressed in different ways over the years, over the millennium. And we have, like today, we have different schools of Buddhism, we have different traditions of Buddhism, even different teachings, teachers teaching different aspects of Buddhism. But when the Buddha was first enlightened, he also realized that he was enlightened to the ultimate reality, but he also realized that very few people could understand it. It was so profound, very hard to comprehend for most people. But there were a few people who could understand it, maybe. So then he had to find a way to teach it, what we would call the conventions, to find the right conventions to be able to express the absolute teachings, the Paramata. And so over the years, I mean, the cultures have changed, the traditions have changed, the language has changed, so it's been adapted or adjusted in many different forms. And we find ourselves like today, in the 21st century, and these teachings came from 2,700 years ago, and the Buddha said it's an ultimate teaching, but of course, the big kind of question is about the convention. Will the conventions get the ultimate teachings across to us? And it's a bit debatable with, people try different things. Some people, I realize, are traditionalists. They try to have a more traditional approach. And you put ourselves in that camp. I'm not sure traditionalists or not. maybe we're kind of radicalists or something, for some people's interpretation. Then there were other modernists, maybe you call them. They want to modernize it. You're going to talk about now different forms of New Age Buddhism. I guess it's not a word, actually, New Age Buddhism, not a term. But to us traditionalists, it sounds like a New Age Buddhism. It's adapted through various things. There's kind of a psychological approach, and there's an intellectual approach, and all kinds of things. But in a way, this is helpful because different approaches. People come to Buddhism from different approaches. And there's a great variety of different temperaments of people. Even in the Buddha's time, the Buddha himself gave quite a variety of different teachings. He realized a wide range of temperaments of people. So there's some people he gave very simple teachings to about morality, maybe. Others he gave very profound teachings about deep aspects of meditation practice. And these teachings are available to us today, a great range of them. Sometimes they are, of course, put in a language which maybe we find a bit difficult to comprehend because it hasn't been translated, maybe not so carefully, not so cleverly to the 21st century. For example, some of the teachings, especially about meditation practice, they come across more kind of psychologically. And maybe people in the Buddhist time, maybe they weren't so, could say, psychologically astute. But many of them had already, quite a bit of understanding of basic spiritual practices. There's a group of people called the Kurus in, say, the area around New Delhi, present-day Delhi in India. And the Buddha gave some very, very profound teachings to them. Very, 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 very detailed teachings, very advanced teachings. There were other people maybe who were not so sophisticated or not so not so experienced in spiritual practices, he gave very simple ones. Yeah. But he was teaching a great variety of people, and I would say basically, if the conventions are done well, then it should be able to translate the ultimate teachings, the ultimate truth to us. Otherwise, maybe we have to reconsider our conventions. Sometimes the conventions just don't speak to us, or even though we say we grow up in a Buddhist country, maybe those teachings don't actually suit us so well. And we just follow it kind of by rote, just by copying what's available to us, and don't really question it. Other times, of course, especially in our more cosmopolitan society, there's lots of what I call spiritual dilettantes. We can browse the internet and just go on and on and on about Buddhism this and Buddhism that and the other. So the real thing is to try and put it into practice. See if it does work for us. If it doesn't work, we'll try something else. But the key to it is to really apply yourself to it. I read there was some study done years ago, and this person was saying they were studying about the different kinds of meditation practice. And the conclusion of that study anyway, was that it didn't really matter what kind of meditation you did. The key to it was following that meditation practice very, very deeply. You can even do, say, not even Buddhist meditation, but Christian meditation. And if you followed it right to the very, very deep levels of it, you had a similar experience that people who did Buddhist meditation. Isn't that interesting? Maybe it's a bit controversial, but interesting. It is hard to say if they realize the same kind of experience, the Buddhist experience of nirvana or nibbana or something like it, but as far as the people practiced, they got down to similar experiences by very, very deep practice. And of course, unfortunately, in a modern day and age, there's so much available to us. There's a danger we just keep shopping around, and it's very familiar for people to take up a practice, and when it starts to get difficult, this doesn't work for me. I have to try something else. But when it gets difficult, it's probably challenging your ego. You see, that's the time to stick with it. Your ego's being challenged. That's the time to stick with it, because then it's throwing up stuff. Usually we choose things which suit us first. We find some which we feel familiar with or suits us, we think. But after a while, if we follow it, it begins to get challenging. It's like doing exercise. You do some exercise, and at first, you feel really quite good. And then you keep doing it and start to ache and get stiff, and is it working for me? Time to try something else, maybe. Try lying down. Try something easier, usually. Just when your muscles are starting to develop. They get painful first, right? So when your ego gets challenged, then it's unpleasant. And of course, we blame the system first. It's not my fault, it's not my ego that's the problem. It's the system that's throwing this stuff up to me. It's unpleasant, it's challenging me. Blame the system for it. Try some other system then. But the real purpose of spiritual practice is to challenge your ego. To try and push us beyond self-centeredness, beyond ego-centeredness, to the beyond the ego, beyond the self. Those are the ultimate truth is beyond the self. Our self is a very, very small universe. Beyond that is a bigger universe. But yourself isn't going to step outside yourself, is it? Unless you get a good kick from your spiritual practices, But first we choose the spiritual practices that we like, but if we follow them deeper and deeper, if they really are effective, then they start to kind of throw up our ego limitations then. So when it gets more difficult, that's when it's really beginning to work. But it takes some patience, continuity, endurance. Ideally also maybe support of some good friends or spiritual guide who can keep you, keep you focused on the practice, keep you encouraged to practice with it. And one time Ajahn Chah said he's not able to teach us any wisdom. He just teaches us patience. When I heard that, I was so disappointed. I came all the way to Thailand to get some wisdom, and all they give me is patience. No thanks. I want wisdom right now. Took me a while to realize the wisdom of that teaching, because of course, the real wisdom comes from your own realization. It's not picking his brains or picking his teachings out of his brain. It's realizing it for yourself, realizing your own inner life, and you can only do that with patience. That's what his position was as a teacher. Give us the patience, give us the encouragement to keep going with the practice. Otherwise, if you're off on your own, it's very easy, okay, being difficult, find something else. Find something easier. And of course, the real challenge, of course, is, we can say on one hand, the Buddhist teachings is to realize the cessation of suffering. But, to be able to realize the cessation of it, you have to find out what the suffering is first. What is that suffering? And you only find out when you're challenged, when it's forced upon you, if you like. Most of us wouldn't voluntarily, challenge our suffering, would you? Find something else to do, find some distraction to distract yourself from it. Find something more comfortable. Otherwise, you're a masochist if you want to indulge in your suffering, huh? You're not a Buddhist, you're a masochist. So we have the great variety of conventions, and Buddha gave us in his own teachings, he gave us quite a variety of different approaches, 40 different meditation themes, for example. And of course, there's also the different teachers around trying to explain the teachings. They have a great variety of approaches. When I was in Thailand years ago, somebody came to me and they're very confused because they used to go around and visit different meditation teachers in Thailand. This is the same school of Buddhism. It wasn't different schools, same teachers, same tradition, as it were, Theravada Buddhism. But they visit different teachers, and each teacher said, they have a different system, different meditation topics, different meditation approaches, and this person was getting very confused because they each said, this is the best method. And why is that? Well, it's the best method for them, that's why. That's the method they found helpful for themselves. So of course they say this is the best method because they don't know any other ones maybe. They've never tried any other practices. So, if you go there and you talk to that teacher and you get some teachings, well, put it into practice. See if it works for you. Obviously it worked for them, but is it going to work for you? You can put it into practice and find out. That's what I see really is what the Buddha is telling us, don't believe what he says, put it into practice and see if it works. If it doesn't work, it needs adjustment, maybe it needs another approach maybe. Like there are some, basically, I think it would say more like, like myself going all the way from Canada to Thailand, I was very, ambitious to get enlightened. So I needed before my visa expires, But the Buddha was teaching the middle way. It's not just about ambition and putting forth energy. It needs to be carefully balanced. Too much effort becomes imbalanced. And then, people have these expectations, and they realize I did have expectations, how it would go. Spending a month in Thailand meditating. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, bingo, I got it. But that was my engineering mind working, you see. But I got there, and already things began to fall apart. Didn't quite work out the way I thought. It took some adjustment. Finally I had to kind of slow my ambition down, and okay, maybe it'll take longer than a month. Maybe at least take 2 months. And finally I really compromised 3 months maybe. Then 9 years passed. So, well, try something else. Try going to the West, maybe. But of course, there is the form for it. Then there's our attitude also. What attitude we bring to it. And our attitude is probably more important than actually the form, as I said. Our attitude, we just want to, just sort of dabble in it a little bit, just give a little taste. And I just want to get enlightened 10%, not the full thing, just 10%. Just reduce my suffering 10%, the progress already. Then, of course, certainly there is kind of a cause and effect relationship. The more energy one puts into it, the saying that if you practice the Dhamma will look after you. The more you practice, and Buddha's kind of hinting at this too. The more we practice, the more our suffering gets reduced. The kind of thing is, it's not quite so linear though. It's more like our suffering, different degrees of suffering get changed. Like, for example, the coarse forms of suffering get reduced first. Then you peel back the coarse forms, and after a while you realize, oh, gee, there's more subtle levels there. And then you peel back those, and oh, there's even more subtler levels there. Says the Buddha talked about the 4 stages of awakening, 4 levels. There's the very, very basic ones. The first level of awakening, you reduce the first 3 hindrances, or fetters they call them. One of them is doubt. When those are reduced, there's still 7 more. There are about 10 fetters that the fully enlightened arahant is able to overcome. 10 of them. So the first level is only 3. Okay. Got 7 more, okay. How about if I at least try for 50-50, There were 5 of them anyway, this lifetime. But I think it's a matter of, not a matter of complete, get over them completely, but reducing the level of suffering. And it's a bit subtle because, when you're also, at the same time, we're increasing our sensitivity, more mindfulness, or awareness, increase our sensitivity for suffering. And many people in their everyday life, their mind is so distracted or maybe so numb, they don't notice how they're suffering. I remember talking to one man in Thailand, and he used to come every morning into the meditation hall, into the hall, to help the monks with their alms food. And one day I came in early, and he was there, and I just thought I'd just have a little conversation, I'd just be friendly with him. Because he used to just quietly go around and he wouldn't say very much. So I asked him one day, I said, how are you feeling? Kenyang I know. And then he turned to me and says, I'm suffering. I was a bit shocked. Then he burst out laughing. He said, he's serious, he's laughing at his suffering. But in Thailand, to acknowledge your suffering, you also acknowledge that there is a way out of it. Yeah. Most people don't even, if they ignore their suffering, you don't even find out there's a way out of it. Yeah. It's still there, but you just don't acknowledge it. Like you kind of forget about it, but it's still there. But when you're aware of it, oh, now I can do something about it. It's like acknowledging perhaps that you have some sickness, some illness. When you can acknowledge it finally, okay, now I have to go to the doctor and get some medicine for it. But if you just even recognize that you're sick, maybe you die before you take it to the hospital. So even though it can be quite, to say even frightening sometimes to acknowledge that one is suffering, right? And with that acknowledgement, then there's a possibility to find some solution to it. That's what Buddha makes available to us. great variety of solutions. You know, he's like sometimes this Buddha is presented as a physician. You know, he has lots of medicine available to us. Yeah, but it's a matter of investigating it, looking into it, and trying to find out. First of all, you have to acknowledge what kind of suffering you have. Yeah. Is it a toothache? You know, you have a headache? Okay, right. What kind of headache? You go to the doctor and say, I want some medicine, I got a headache. What's he going to say? Go home and sleep on it. You know? You say, oh, I got this kind of headache, and the more detail you can give them, probably the more accurate the diagnosis can be. And then we have available to us, I mean, we have to kind of help ourselves to investigate the Buddha's teachings, to find the right medicine then. And we try it out. And if it doesn't work, well, try something else, or go deeper into it, or maybe we have to look at our attitude or our approach. And we're just trying to be too, trying to get rid of it. We're using that practice to get rid of our suffering rather than understand it. Understand what it is and what the cause of it is. So the conventions is what we would actually work with. I mean, the ultimate truth. Some people, they busy themselves, I think, with talking too much about the ultimate truth. It's all empty, nothing there, it's all emptiness and that. Yeah, but, it's just, most of the time, just hot air, But what's the convention is how to, what path to take, what tools to use, what skillful means to use to get there. Rather than just talk about it. So I understand there are some questions. Right. This is your time for questions.
I have a friend that's suffering from sadness.
Sadness?
Yep, from loss.
Yeah.
How can they move on from the sadness?
Well, first of all, what kind of sadness?
From probably attachment to someone, the loss of attachment.
Well, the first stage I would say is try to look at, try to feel it, try to sense it, into it. What is this sadness? What is this? Is it grief? Is it, despair? Is it kind of, there's all kinds of varieties of these emotions. Yeah. And most of us, we give a little name to it and we think we understand it, but up here maybe we do, but not in our heart. You try to open your heart to it, open your awareness to it if you like. Just try to sense into it. What is this anyway? Like a number of times I've noticed my own, I have some experience myself, some kind of emotion if you like. But when I look into it more deeply, I realize that's only the tip of the iceberg, That's how it kind of expresses itself overtly, or kind of even safely sometimes. Like there was one situation some years ago when I had a question and answer session with somebody, and they were saying that I wrote a book about the hindrances, the 5 different hindrances to meditation practice, basically, or spiritual practice. And this person, first of all, they thought that their hindrance was restlessness. So they looked at this restlessness, and then they tried different meditation practices and ways to work with it. In this book I wrote, there's the hindrance, and there's also practices to practice, methods to practice to help relieve it. You see, if you practice these meditations, then it didn't work. It was still there. And one of the first things I said in the introduction to the book was, when you notice one of these hindrances, look very carefully what it is. Study it very carefully first. Many times it's just the shadow of it. It's the surface. So she went back to back to her restlessness again and looked more carefully. Then she got a real bit of a shock. She realized that the hindrance was not restlessness, it was anger. And of course, anger is a lot more challenging and a lot more threatening, if you like, than restlessness, you see. But it was just covering itself, it was expressing itself with restlessness, but deep behind that was anger. And that was a big issue then, it was a lot bigger issue and even more, kind of, you say, touchy or more empowering than restlessness. And when she got in touch with that, already restlessness began to fade away, and then the anger came up. So, I don't know which is better, to have restlessness or anger. But basically, neither one, both of them are hindrances, but, becoming more aware of what's really going on there. It's like you're just been chasing shadows, you're investigating what's the real issue there. You already said a few things, maybe attachment, but it's a whole big mine of information there. You begin to look into it, tap into it. And sometimes just being aware of it, just noticing. As a human being, we face sadness, we face loss. It's just nature, So what's the problem really, Maybe the problem is that you don't want to acknowledge it, or you're trying to ignore it or deny it or something. When it's just the way it is. You feel sad sometimes. And many years ago, when I was in England, we heard about this ex-monk I knew. We all knew. Many of us who have been in Thailand knew this ex-monk who was with us in Thailand, and we just heard that he had died in a car crash. He was only in his 20s. And I felt really, of course, a bit shocked because I knew him quite well. And I felt really shocked first. And I thought, oh, wait a minute. We're meditating for 10 years. I shouldn't feel sadness, Didn't feel sorrow. Then I realized, no, I really felt sad, It was very unfortunate. He was a very nice guy, and he spent time as a monk, and he's gone. Of course, it's a loss. It's just normal to feel loss. I'm sure. I don't know exactly, but I'm sure that even enlightened beings feel a certain amount of sadness when somebody dies. But when it becomes a real issue, you can't let go of it. You can't acknowledge that, okay, this person is here, they arise, they come into your life, and then they pass away from it. And you're holding on to it somehow. Attachment, maybe. Then it becomes an issue. They shouldn't have died, it's unfair, blah, 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 blah. The reality is, people die, and we feel it, So, it's not very pleasant, especially, many times these emotions like sorrow, for example, they're so painful, we refuse to acknowledge them. And then they sit with us, unfinished business, you see, unprocessed emotions. And they just sit there and keep kind of, festering or something. Then it becomes depression, and it becomes, very complicated. But it is sorrow. It is just like the greed, aversion, delusion. It's part of being human. We have greed, we have aversion, we have delusion. And trying to deny that is foolishness, not wisdom. And ideally, with these meditation practices, being able to calm your mind, to be able to focus on the breathing and calm your mind. Like most of us we have our own emotional reactive syndromes, you see. So of course, something like that, maybe sorrow comes up, and then we haven't processed that, don't know how to process that, and then we react to it, and we get spun off into the reactions rather than can stay with the. If your mind calms down more, you can sit with it. Your mind doesn't spin off with all the analysis, the rationalizing, whatever, emotionalizing about it. Just can sit there. Oh, just feel this sorrow. Yes, it hurts. It hurts when you lose somebody. And it can become like you bring it into your consciousness, and then it can flow out of your consciousness. Because you're really present with it, fully present with it. You've lived it now. So they can just let it go then. It becomes less of a festering wound. easy to say. Sit up on my high chair here and talk about it. It's easy to say, but not very pleasant. When you see the effect, and sometimes, like in a retreat situation, for example, the form keeps you on your seat, maybe, and then you have to face it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be forced with that situation. You wouldn't do it. You would really sit there and, sense their sorrow, But that's what's happening right now, You distract yourself, go somewhere else, do something else, but sit down again in a quiet moment and it's there again. You haven't really processed it. There's another practice which is, if you find that, challenging, it's another practice the Buddha gave is called practice of friendliness. Metta bhavana, it's called. Friendliness, I prefer the word friendliness because I find that I can work with that, but sometimes translated as loving kindness, but to me it's a little bit too grand, But I can be friendly with my, say, sadness, if you like, because it's part of me. Do I war with myself, make an enemy of it, or can I be more friendly towards it? And if you can kind of shift your attitude and just try and be friendly, open, receptive, rather than being trying to make into an enemy, you find you have a different relationship. You can still be there, but you have a more friendly or forgiving attitude towards it. You have more openness towards it. Most of the unpleasant experiences in life, we turn into enemies, basically, and try to push away in our various, coping mechanisms. Ignore it, push it away, distract yourself, deny it, rationalize it, whatever. But with a changing your attitude to friendliness, okay, that's the experience right now. I better be friends with it than try to fight with it. And just that already, that attitude can give you a little bit more peace of mind and stability and centeredness, perhaps. That can be developed, increasing friendliness to more and more disturbing aspects of our being, if you like. To me, it doesn't mean that I love it. It's kind of hard to say that I love it, but I can be friendly anyway, and hospitable. I used to work in a fast food restaurant, so we had to be friendly to the customers, Even they were obnoxious drunks, but I couldn't do it for long though, I still get not enough patience. Any more questions? So it's all clear for now. If you think of something overnight, you can always ask. I can came in tomorrow. He's back for a day anyway.
2 days.
2 days. Well, you leave tomorrow. Monday, anyway. Yeah. So I think I should pause there tonight.
Handmaya Dhamma Kataya Sadhu Karama Sai